Okay, so back to my introduction. Hi, I'm Clifford Oliver, photographer in Greenwich, New York. Greenwich, located right on the Battenkill River, which is where this lovely photograph was taken. Battenkill is a long, meandering river coming out of Vermont, right into New York. A wonderful place for fishing and just hanging out, which I like to do. And one day while hanging out, what should come by but a flotilla of 7 beauties coasting down Battenkill, floating down Battenkill on these inner tubes, or tube playing things. I wanted to bring this photo up to talk about exposure. This photograph is a little underexposed. Now in certain areas you see the exposure is right on, but in the shadow areas where the sunlight didn't come through the trees, it's a little dark. And there is a way of correcting for that, and I should have done it post-production, by literally just dodging, keeping that light from making parts of this photograph too dark. Also, what does this photograph lack? It lacks contrast, and by contrast I mean it's contrasty enough, but separation between the background and my subject could have been enhanced if I had, like this subject, given it a darker background, on this subject given it a darker or a lighter, actually considering how dark that photograph or that portion of the photograph is, could have went much lighter just to bring her out more, to make her stand out. Further illustrate that, this wonderful hemp photograph literally cut out to mimic America, the hemping of America. And you can see, putting it on a black backboard, here where the image goes dark, it doesn't translate. You can't separate it from the background. Whereas here, where the image is much lighter, the separation is much clearer. So think about contrast when you're making a photograph. Keeping with that contrast theme, great contrast. Whoops, let me give this some real color, show what it really looks like. But at the same time, though I have contrast, I also have it too dark. And often that happens with backlight, which is a favorite light of mine. I love backlight. It always gives you that beautiful rim. But the danger with it, and it certainly is here, the detail is lost in the shadows. And again, too, using post-production, that can be lightened to bring that out. Or the ram could have given me a better pose, where he would have been in the 3/4 of that light. I would have got more light on him rather than just that glancing light off his nose. All right. Now here's a photograph I really like, and it's very, very busy. Very busy, and it probably could stand a little bit more contrast. But some people say it's too much in one photograph. I don't think so. Not showing what it is. This too is a famous river. It's the Bighorn River in the southeast corner of Montana. Bighorn is famous for being the camping ground of Crazy Horse and his band at Massacred Custer. People still camp there. What I like about this photograph is that it shows so many stories, and it's full use, composition, full use of that square unit, right? Showing where it is, right, in the forest, in the stream, and yet if you look at it in here, this guy's watering their horses, kids going down with their horses, bathing in the river. Yep, bathing in the river. Here again, watering horses. A lot of different stories and vignettes in here. Way in the background, if you really, start to study this photograph, you'll see the camp of the Crow. You'll see little teepee poles sticking up and little cabins. A photograph that I think technically is right on, but it just has no soul. It's not saying anything other than it's a pastoral scene. It's pleasant enough, but it's lacking drama. It's lacking. Yeah, I mean, exposure's good. I love these lines. When you think about composition, always look for lines. Lines will lead you into things. It makes the eye exercise. Yeah, the eye will follow lines. And yeah, you can see these guys are escorting their ponies into the distance, but something is missing here. And what exactly it is, I don't know. Perhaps you guys can email me or something and say what this photo needs. You can see too that I go back and forth between black and white, color, sepia tone. I don't have any restrictions on techniques. I think that'll make a photograph work. If I think it'll enhance a photo or snap it too, I do. Most of my photographs, even though like one like this is black and white, I didn't necessarily take it in black and white. Even though my early photographs are almost primarily black and white. And I like this because, again, too, we've got good contrast. right? Easy to separate our subject, these haystacks, from the background, which is the sky, right? Clear sky, which is why I didn't show too much sky. If there's nothing in the sky, why show it? So I brought the sky down as much as I could and yet still maintain composition. I like this effect of the corn stacks growing. You know, the closest one to you, as it further gets back, it gets smaller. And you'll also notice that the one closest to you, the biggest one, is the sharpest one. And that again too holds the eye. Till your eye starts to get lazy and relaxes and starts drifting back. And if you're still paying attention, you'll see that far stack of corn is soft, is out of focus. Done primarily to accent that first one. You can play with people's eyes, and I think in a photograph you should make them wander literally all over your, I'm going to call it canvas, but it's really all over your photograph, all over your image. And there should be something in every corner of that image. Oops. Classic old photograph of mine, yep. Fill the frame, right? Nothing in the frame is in it that shouldn't be in it, right? Minimize the sky because there's nothing in the sky. And when I say nothing in the sky, there's no airplane, there's no clouds. It's like a plain backdrop. And my primary focus, boom, 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 boom. Yes, on farmer and cows. Nice contrast, and considering the commercial success I've had with this photograph, it doesn't just work for me, I know it works for others. And if you're not thinking of doing photography commercially, share your photographs with your friends and see what kind of feedback you can get from them. And make sure they're friends so that the comments are all constructive. Again, leading lines, right? Leading lines, whoops, bing. Leading lines, oops. Yeah, leading lines. Oh, S's. The human eye loves S's, loves diagonals, and have little surprises for them along the way. My surprise here was a horse, of course. And I'm going to go back to this photograph just to show that it's a horizontal. You've seen photographers sometimes hold their cameras like that. Well, that's a vertical. And verticals are good too. Sometimes your subject is vertical. And again too, I threw this vertical because I wanted to include not just the pig, but his environment. And that is probably the neatest pig shack I have ever seen. Yeah, it's on a friend of mine's farm, and I just love it. I could see people living there. If you're a fan of Little Abner comics, it was kind of like their house. But yeah, fill that frame. Again, too, I didn't show much sky here because there was nothing in the sky. But literally, that acts too as almost like a point for the center of this photograph. Nice contrast, separating pigs from the background. Moving right along. Oh. I don't shoot nearly the landscapes that I should. But every now and then you find a spot in the woods that just begs to be photographed, painted, remembered forever. And this was such a place, and I'm so glad I did it because it no longer exists. Yeah, it's now housing. They plowed all this up. But it was a beautiful spot right off Route 29, heading towards Saratoga. Again, too, vertical, because trees tend to grow up, not so much wide. Whereas if I were photographing an orchard, it would be a horizontal shot because they're wide. I have to tell you, I stole this photograph from a painting by an artist, a local artist, Leslie Peck. She had a painting of a bull that was really nice, but what really made the painting was she cropped it really tight. And I did that here too, just to show how massive this creature is and how he's literally about to pop out of the frame. I thought it was done really effective in her painting, and I know this place where there are a lot of bulls. So I said, yeah, I was going to do that on my next bull photograph, and I thought it transferred really well. The whole idea of this menacing bull and his hugeness and his blockiness too, which is why you see this isn't a horizontal or vertical, but a square. Just to show how blocky and thick and just magnificent this creature is. Good contrast, right? Black against the green, nice separation. And you can see he's in focus, but his background isn't. Again, too, that would separate him from the background, put the emphasis on him. Yeah, if there's a tip that I can give, it would be aware of your backgrounds. What's happening behind your subject? And you don't want it to be too distracting. And sometimes you want to include it into your subject, like the Bighorn River picture, where it's definitely the background is part of the subject. It's that whole environment. But here I really want to emphasize this bull. Yes, separate your subject from the background. Black is negative, right? It doesn't exist. So it really makes these two pop out. I'm playing with this studio setting in an outdoor situation where I'm using outdoor lighting, but using a black backdrop, making it a studio situation, taking advantage of the natural light. I like this picture, not just because of the subject matter. These guys are just very comfortable with each other, and I think by looking directly into the camera like they did, it shows that they were very comfortable with me. And not only comfortable, but enjoyable. We were all smiling, having a good time. I photographed these two guys for years that they came to the Washington County Fair. Almost every year they made it a point to search me out and get their portrait done. I like this photograph too because it's a portrait. And as much as we all look alike, and I mean we all look alike, that our noses tend to be in the middle of our faces, our eyes are always above our nose, our mouths are below our nose, we all look so different. And yeah, I think photography is really, and painting too, all of the visual arts, it really emphasizes that so much. So yeah, and I think too, portraits are, or should be, or maybe not should be, but portraits are often a photographer's mainstay. You know, we're interested in people. I mean, we're people, we're social animals. You know, I tend to like people. You know, everyone says, oh, I like horses, like Cliff likes horses because they're so much nicer than people. Well, that's not always the case. Not, you know, so yeah, I gotta say, I do like people. And I like photographing people. So, any questions? No questions from the audience? Ha! Got some great classics here. Oh boy, oh boy. Okay, I think early on I talked about f-stops and shutter speeds and ISOs, which are really the controls of your camera that allow light in, and how much light, and how sensitive your film is to that light. That's your ISO. But what happens when you mess up? What happens when you overexpose? Give a subject too much light, like in this one, where you lose your subject into the background. Yes, no, you've got to have good exposure or serious post-production skills. Yeah, too light. So you've either got to speed up your shutter speed to get less light in there. You can also close down your f-stop, which allows the volume of light to be lessened to get in on that photosensitive subject, and that photosensitivity is determined by your ISO. An ISO, the higher the number, the more sensitive it is to light. The less light you need to make a picture with a high ISO. A low ISO, you need a lot of light to make an image. Now this image is too dark. How can I tell this image is too dark? Because the whites of her eyes aren't white. Her beautiful white teeth aren't white. So yeah, that could have certainly been lightened up a lot. Some would say maybe she's cropped too tight. I don't think so, because it's not like I cut off her head, like you'll see I did for this gentleman. Cutting off his head, no, that's like a lobotomy. Hers is more artistic because you can still see her hair is in it. This photograph is absolutely perfect. Not only is this one a handsome, serious guy, but the background is blurred just enough so that it doesn't distract from him at all. Exposure is good. You can see the whites of his eyes may not be as white as that button, but you got to remember too, he's in shadow. And if you made it that light, well, then it would be a little weird looking. But I think it's printed appropriately. Again, too, a little dark. Now, darkness, too, will also give you more detail. And sometimes, especially if you want to look softer or younger, you don't want that detail to show. Yeah, you don't want to see the texture in your skin. You want it to be all smooth. And you'll see this lightness does that far better than the darkness. So you can use light, too, to affect sentiment or how you feel about a photograph. This photograph is, as nice as it is, could use some contrast. Because it is a guy, he can take some hardness, some sharpness. You'd like to see the texture or the weathered look in his face, you know, the individual hairs on his sideburns and mustache. Again, on our softer side, the feminine side, you want it to be a little soft. So soft light, which tends to be light that's much more even. Soft light, and if anything, print a little lighter. Maybe not so as light as this, because now I've even got too much texture in the hair. And if I went a little darker, the hair would go darker, and it would be more appealing. This gentleman, as dark as he is, I think his printed is still too dark, which makes him even darker. And this really contrasty light should have been a lot softer. Should have been a lot softer, only because I can't really get any detail, or very little detail in the shadow area. And the lid area is blown out, literally blown out. Right, you can't detect the hairs in his beard, you know, even in his skin here. It's so overexposed, it's blown out. Too much contrast, and I think too little light. Again, a nice soft light makes it very, very nice. But I could have used a little bit more contrast. As you can see, I'm starting to lose her hair to the background, and actually in the top end of this image, I do lose her hair into the background. But the softness is there, but just not the contrast that I'd like to see. Now here I'm full of contrast. Yes, big difference between him and his backdrop, really done nicely, but it could have went a little even darker, because you can see even in his fingers, I'm starting to lose it. He's starting to, when a black man starts to delve into a white background, you're overexposed, a little too much light. And it would have taken away, too, if I made it a little darker, taken away this ghostly effect that's happening where the light is coming from. Again, too, even though this is on a black background, it's too light. And I can see that there's no detail in his face, right? There are parts that are blown out. When I say blown out, I mean you don't see skin texture. You don't even recognize some areas as skin, or separation between where his skin is and where his hair begins. You know, unlike in here where it's pretty evident. It should be everywhere. Too dark, be harsh on yourself. Yes, be harsh on yourself. You know this picture's too dark when his hair is lost in the trees, and he's not that close to the trees. This could stand a lot more light. Yeah, this picture could be lightened up a great deal more. Now this picture has a lot of sentimental value for me. It's my son. He's got his dog in the background, and it's backlight, which I love that rim effect of backlight. But what I don't like about backlight is that a lot of detail in the shadows are lost, and that's certainly true here. Live and learn. I'm learning. This is what's classic 3/4 view, where you got the shape of the face. Right, lights coming in nice almost at a 45-degree angle, which is really very nice, very pleasing. It's a hard light, which looks good on a man. Gives him kind of a tough, appearance. And again, too, background is blurred, so just he stands out. Just what you focus on is in focus, and everything else falls soft. Similar technique, 3/4 view, 45-degree light. Coming from one side, you can see where the light's coming from. If you ever want to know where light's coming from, or even how many lights there are, look in the subject's eyes, and the eyes will reflect exactly where the light's coming from. But the shadow on this side is not so dark as to eliminate his eye or facial features. Good exposure, and again, here too. Putting the man in the harsh light, putting the woman in a much softer light.